Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this recap episode of Flow Over Fear. And today I'm going to recap the interview that I just had with Ernesto Mandowsky, who is the CEO of CPD Advisors. And he helps entrepreneurs, startup phase leaders, and solopreneurs and people of the ilk to transform chaos into cash flow. How does he do that? Well, he does it through systems. And I know when I say the word systems, it kind of sends a twinge of fear in our hearts and our bellies. And I think the reason it does is because we don't like to think about systems. We don't like to think about that. It's something that we're generally just afraid of. And that is a point that Ernesto brought up, was that entrepreneurs, leaders of businesses tend to feel afraid of systems. They feel it's kind of like one of those things where it's like exercise, where you just feel like you don't have time for it. So you're going to put it off. You're going to freeze. You're not going to worry about it. Why? Because systems are all about accountability. Systems are about stuff getting real, isn't it? And so this was a great interview, and this is one that I need because as I expressed in the interview, I suck at systems. I'm not very good at it. And I have to rely on other people to help me with systems. And I do that in the business that I run. I do this in my solo business. I do this for this very podcast because I would never be able to organize something like this. And but what I've found is personally that when we have the system in place, the chaos tends to go away. And chaos, of course, is one of the causes of our anxiety, of our stress, of the fear that we have a lot of times, of that uncertainty. And one way to control the aspects of the uncertainty that we have is to create systems around the things that we can control so that we don't have all of that chaos. When we alleviate some of that chaos, we are free to be visionaries. And that is a point that Ernesto made late in the interview, which was a great, great point and very, very important to everybody. And this is one of the more important episodes for me personally, because just taking this idea that when we create systems, we can free ourselves from being bound by this chaos. But when we're a visionary, we tend to have our heads in the visionary mode where we're, rightfully so, where we're thinking about the future of our business, where we want to take it. And it's important that we stay out of the business of being in the business. So one of the ways we do that is through creating the right kind of system. So it was important that I asked Ernesto how we would define systems, because that's a big word. It's a big and scary word. And when we get clarity on things, we tend to take the fear out of it, right? So the definition that he gave is that systems are really just a set of tools, a set of people, and a playbook, right? It's tools that will help to operate the business. It's people that will help. It's people that will do the work in the business or help to support the business. And it's the playbook or the SOPs that are going to help drive the business, the instructions to get the business going. And without a system like that, without the tools, without the people, without the playbook, you're in chaos mode. You're essentially forced into this reaction mode, which we all get into, and we're reacting to the uncertainty. We're reacting to the things that are outside of our control. And when that happens, well, of course we're going to be afraid. Of course we're going to be in that anxiety and that stress, because all of these things that we aren't expecting are hitting us. We don't have controls over our business. So it's important to set the systems up to help alleviate some of that anxiety. And I wanted to dig in more into this idea of how to create systems, because there's larger businesses that have many, many, many different kinds of systems and very complex systems that help operate the business. And that's, I think, what tends to scare us a little bit is we get into that complexity of being too big. But when it's just us in this small role or in this phase of this startup that we're developing or whatever it might be, then, what are the best ways to start building systems? What do we need to look at first? Ernesto's answer to that was to first focus on our goals, focus on the goals of the business. And this is pretty aligned with the business or the discussion that I had in a recent podcast where I was talking about 3 things to help to, quit proof your goals in 2023. If you'd like to look that up, that's available on YouTube and iTunes and all that good stuff. One of those ways is to really, really clarify with precision, be clear on the goals that you have, clear on what you want to achieve, and make sure that's clear to the point that you know what success looks like. Do that first. And then Ernesto's second point, which was another point that I'd also brought up in that same video, was to measure, and in this case, when you're setting up systems, that you can measure it so that you can really set up the appropriate systems to make sure that you're on track with those measurements. Once you have the goals set in place and you have the way that you're going to measure it, you could start moving forward with creating the systems. He says that basically establishes your playbook. Your playbook is your SOP. And so that's an important concept of how that was broken down. That once you're able to set those goals and create that measurement for the product, you can start to really operate more in that visionary role again. And when we as entrepreneurs, or when you as an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, whatever it may be, whatever role you're in life, right? I mean, these systems don't just exist in our business; they exist in our lives to make our lives a little more chaos free. It allows us, when we have that freedom, to find what he would call the honey, which is that unique intersection of where our skills, our insights, and our abilities can create value for the world. And one of the more profound things that was said in this interview by Ernesto was that there's chaos in our business, and it causes fear, it causes stress, and all of those things. It's not fun chaos, but there's beautiful chaos too. There's beautiful chaos in this world. And he was telling a story about how he was in the forest and and was looking at a set of some bees, and there's this beautiful chaos that occurs there where every bee in that colony is working together to produce nectar for the entire colony. That's essentially how we're operating as human beings. Is we're all going to work, we're all doing our own things to create value for the world. And when we're operating within our honey, we are in the intersection of our skills, our insights, our abilities. We're able to create value in the world. But if that big obstacle of chaos is in our way, if we don't have the systems in place, we're obstructed. Our flow is obstructed. We're not experiencing the flow we need to add that value and to create fulfillment for ourselves. So the important message that he was getting across there was when we were able to free ourselves up from from being in the business and when we're able to be the true visionaries, because the visionary should not be it's not a good use of their time to be in that world creating systems. They need to be in the visionary. Well, then we're in the process of creating value. We're more able to be flow. When we can remove chaos, we have a better opportunity to be in flow. And so if you, as the visionary of the company, as the visionary of your life, should not be in that role of creating systems and doing all of that stuff, well, then who should be? Well, that's where Ernesto's business comes in. That's where people like him and things like him, or even if you look at others that have already created the systems for these things, you can duplicate them. But for somebody like Ernesto, if you're a solopreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, that's where he comes in, because he can create this with a framework, that he calls the 6 Ps. And those 6 Ps are essentially the way that we are able to create systems in our own lives or in our own businesses. The first, it's priorities. What priorities do we have in the business? And then it's people. What people do we need? Our employees, stakeholders, coaches, those kinds of things, the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And then what are the projects? That's the third P, which is our daily list, our daily to-dos, our measurements and things like that. Those are the projects that we have. And then it's the promotion, how we market our products, how we market how we promote our brands. Then it's playbooks. The playbooks are the SOPs, the standard operating procedures for the business, the rules by which we're going to be, and the methods by which we're going to perform the duties within the business. And then the final P is planning. When you have all these pieces in place, you have a system around which you can operate within that business. And the first system he says you should create in your business is really a system of around fulfillment. And that fulfillment has a double meaning. The first meaning of that fulfillment is, literally fulfilling on a customer's demand, on a customer's order. Because once you can achieve that, you're gaining the confidence of the customers. You can start to continue to build on it. But really, it's also around more meta, the fulfillment of our lives. If we're creating these systems, we're actually creating fulfillment in our world. And that's one thing that we need to focus on. So this 6P philosophy, this 6P framework that he has, is a way to do that. I asked him then how often we should be looking at this 6P framework within our own businesses, in our own world. And he said every day. And I know that may sound like a lot, but if you think about that for a moment, when you're thinking about your business, when you're thinking about the chaos that's happening around you right now without those systems in place, how frequently are you thinking about that chaos? How frequently are you reacting to things in your business? How frequently are you immersing yourself in the bowels of the business and doing the work of an operator because you don't have the systems in place? My guess is that's an everyday thing. And and that's not just true for you, that's true for me. That's why this episode was so important to me, because I need to hear this. But having that system and looking at those 6Ps every single day and making sure it's still aligned, that's going to free up your capacity to actually be a visionary. It's going to free up the stress and help you to rise above that fear and experience more flow, because you're working on the business in a more appropriate manner. One of the things that this interview reinforced was a theme that happens a lot within these interviews. And one of the themes that comes up a lot when we're talking about fear and how to get past it, how to rise above it and experience more flow. And that theme that I'm talking about here is letting go. And that's a theme that has come up multiple times within multiple interviews, because the idea of being afraid is really that we're holding on to something that maybe we should let go of, maybe we should delegate, maybe we should eliminate, maybe we should consolidate, but we're holding on to it for fear of something. And often the solution is just letting go. And in this instance, it's really letting go of the chaos, often letting go of the vine and delegating these responsibility of creating the systems to someone else. And letting go of worrying about things and letting the systems be able to take control. What do you need to let go of today to make your business more effective? What do you need to let go of in order to make your life more fulfilling? I'll leave you with those two questions as I thank you for listening to this episode. And I really encourage you to listen to the full interview, because it was not only impactful for me as somebody who is afraid of systems, but also somebody who wants to be a better visionary, be a better leader. It's important that we put those systems in place and creating the right types of systems will help us to rise above that fear. So take that to heart and listen to the episode. I'm very grateful that Ernesto was willing to come on and share his wisdom. And I am grateful for you for listening to this episode. And thanks for listening to the recap. I will see you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.